You know, when you turn on the news, it feels like the same handful of conflicts are on a constant loop. And don't get me wrong, those stories are incredibly important, but they're just the tip of the iceberg. What we don't see, what's happening away from the cameras, well, that's where millions are caught in wars the world has decided to forget.
Okay, just look at this. On the left, you've got the wars that get all the attention. On the right, a list of forgotten conflicts that just goes on, places where people are suffering and dying with barely a whisper in the global media. And honestly, this list barely scratches the surface. To really get what we're missing, let's just zoom in on one of them.
We're going to talk about a war that's so brutal, so unbelievably dangerous for regular people, that it's earned a truly terrifying title. I want you to just let that sink in for a second. The experts, the people whose entire job is to track this stuff, say this one conflict is worse for civilians than the wars in Sudan or the DRC. And yet, I'm willing to bet most of you have never even heard of it. It's called the Anglophone Crisis in Cameroon.
So how did this happen? Well, it all kicked off with peaceful protests, teachers and lawyers just asking for their rights. But the government's response was so harsh that it lit a match, and the whole thing exploded into a full-blown war. The human cost is just staggering. Thousands killed, more than 500,000 people forced to flee their homes. And what makes this so awful is that there are no good guys here. Government soldiers burn villages, and separatist fighters kidnap children from schools. It's a total nightmare for anyone caught in the middle.
So, that brings us to the big question, right? How on earth does a crisis this awful, this deadly for ordinary people stay completely off the world's radar? Why don't we know about it?
Well, it really boils down to three things. First, Cameroon just isn't seen as strategically important. You know, no huge oil fields, no major shipping lanes, so the big global powers, they just aren't paying attention. Second, the government has been really smart about controlling the story. They call it an internal terrorism problem, and that narrative makes it easy for other countries to just back off. And finally, it's a messy story. There's no simple hero and villain here, which is what the 24-hour news cycle often needs to get people to care. And this exact pattern just repeats itself over and over again around the world.
And look, this isn't just some academic debate about how the media works. This global silence, this massive blind spot we all have, it has a real and sometimes very, very bloody cost. Because when the world looks away, it's like giving the perpetrators a green light. It allows these horrible situations to just simmer and boil until they explode into a full-blown catastrophe.
This number, it's a chilling forecast. Right now in Sudan, the city of Al-Fashir is surrounded, and experts are screaming from the rooftops, warning that if it falls, we could see a massacre on a scale that's hard to even comprehend. We could be talking about as many as 60,000 people murdered, and this is all happening right now, while our attention is somewhere else.
You see, this is what happens when the world ignores the warning signs. The global inattention basically creates the perfect cover, the darkness needed for this kind of slaughter to happen. Many are afraid that what's brewing could become one of the single worst war crimes of our lifetime.
And that leaves all of us with a really uncomfortable question. What's happening in Al-Fashir is a terrifying warning shot. For every crisis that finally gets some attention, how many others are just festering out there in the dark? The price of our ignorance is paid in human lives, and it forces you to ask, what else is happening in the world's blind spots?